Welcome to Mental Makeover Radio, your go-to destination for meaningful conversations about mental health. I'm your host and your trusted therapist bestie, Cecilia Manella. Join us as we explore the complexities and messiness of human experience by addressing your questions and concerns. I'm here to provide a straightforward and practical therapy advice. So grab your favorite beverage, whether it's tea, coffee, or whatever tickles your taste buds, and get ready to embark on a mental makeover. Welcome to Mental Makeover Radio. I'm your host, Cecilia Manella. I'm really glad that you're here. We are back after having a bit of time off over the summer for some rest and restoration and a little bit of fun. I hope you've had some great downtime over the summer, enjoyed your time off. If you got to take some time off, I hope you had some rest. I hope you had lots of fun. We are back on this podcast for a new season. Really excited to share with you some interviews I did over the summer that are really exciting. Everything from like narcissism to relationships to job transitions, just a whole bunch of guests that were coming your way this season. But I wanted to start off this season with some reflection, mainly because September always feels like a new year to me. And I blame being in school for way too long. You know, um, the energy maybe of the fall feels a bit more new, and January just feels a little bit exhausting because you're just recovering from the demands of the holiday season. That September always has this freshness to it. And I love this time of year for reflection. I set a lot of goals. I'll be sharing a bit about my goal setting process in the coming months. But I wanted to share some insight I've had recently in a yoga class. So I've returned to yoga. One of my goals for the September for fall and moving forward is to kind of get back into some old practices that I had to let go of during COVID. So I was an avid yoga, a yogi, and really enjoyed it. And when COVID hit, the yoga studios were really impacted, and my favorite yoga studio closed down and went out of business. So a lot of yoga studios went out of business. So now I'm back at yoga. There's some studios that have reopened. Very exciting. What I love about yoga practice, besides the body movement, which I actually need because as a therapist, I'm sitting down quite a bit of the day, is the little kernels of, you know, gold little nuggets, let's say, that the instructors give you. And it's a little bit woo woo for you. What I tend to do is take these and interpret them myself. And my most recent yoga class was really insightful. Now, if any of you do yoga, there's different types of yoga. And so I have returned back into yin yoga. And what yin yoga is holding poses for long periods of time. And it requires quite a bit of patience. And patience is not a virtue I possess. And I'm sure it's patience not a virtue that you possess because we live in a very hustle culture. We live in a very fast moving culture. And we're always kind of focused on being efficient. And slowing down doesn't feel really efficient. And so we tend to move really quickly. And in yin yoga, you are moving very slowly. And it brings up a lot of impatience and a bit of like vibration in your body, which is very, very normal and very typical. And so, what the instructor was talking about was the difference between what's real and what's true, and that what is real isn't always true. Now, the context in which she was talking about this was when there's discomfort in your body. So, like many people, I have lower back, let's say, struggles and shoulder pain. So, this is a very common place where you hold stress in your body because your body holds a lot of stress. And lower back and upper shoulders, kind of that neck area, shoulder area, is a really common place to be holding stress. If you've ever been to a massage therapist, they will tell you it is like the two key pieces that most people hold their stress. And so we were in poses, and you got to hold poses for 5 minutes at a time, which sounds easy, but yet it's very uncomfortable. It's meant to extend the stretch. It's meant to move in a way that you're not used to. And she was saying that the discomfort in your body is very real. It's an experience that you're having. So I have this tightness in my back. And in those poses, it's very uncomfortable. Not quite painful, but it kind of feels like it might get to that place. So she was talking about how that experience is of tightness is a reality, But what is actually true about it? Because our interpretation of that reality sometimes can be untrue. And what pops up immediately is I can't do this pose. I can't stretch this deeply. I can't hold this. It's too uncomfortable. Now, those things are actually not true. So the experience of the discomfort is real. My interpretation of that discomfort is not necessarily real because the truth is, I was able to hold those poses. I was able to move past the discomfort and I was able to experience a relief of that discomfort. And she kept on talking about what is real may not always be true as a way to be present in your life and present in that moment. And it made me really think about how that's really translatable to all areas of our life, that our experiences are real. Whether you're having a conflict with a partner, or your child is having a meltdown, or your teenager is being, I don't know, a little bit sassy or mouthy, there's a conflict at work, there's disciplinary issues in your job. All these things are actually real. They're actually happening. These are all experiences you're happening. But our interpretation of those experiences may not actually be truth, may not be true because our brain is constantly looking for meaning. Now, this is just what it means to be a human. And I've talked about this in other episodes where we can have something happen and our meaning making of that situation is what we have a lot of control over. So I don't have control over the reality of the discomfort in my body in that moment. So I'm on the yoga mat, my back is a little bit sore, I'm in this position and I feel a lot of tightness. That is actually real. That's what's actually happening. But the meaning I create of that is actually up to me. You have the power to embrace the meaning you're creating of your experiences. So, let's say, for example, you are having a conflict with your spouse, and that conflict is very real. The meaning you create of it is actually a way of control over. So, sometimes we create meanings that reinforce a story that we're holding on to. That you don't love me, you don't care about me, my needs don't actually matter, my voice isn't heard. There's all these meaning that we create, all these perceptions that we create. And they may not always be true. I'm not saying they're not true. I'm not saying all the meaning you create isn't true. What I'm saying is that sometimes it may not be true. And that there's value in questioning the meaning that we're making out of the experiences we're having. Now, part of this in order to do this is that you actually need some quiet time and you need time to reflect. And if you were to think about your schedule, look at your calendar, ask yourself, how much time during the day do you have that is not scheduled, not being demanded by other people, where you actually just get to sit, maybe write, reflect, think, have some moments of silence? I don't mean like 30 seconds. I'm talking about like at least 10 to 15 minutes. And I would hazard to guess that most people, most of you, don't really factor that in, that we are spending our lives running from one task to the next task or one thing after the other. And that when we slow down, when we sit down, when we're quiet, we can label that time as lazy, unproductive, or useless or wasted time. And we're not really appreciating that being present in your life with that quiet, that silence, that non demanding time is actually really essential because it is in those moments that you can stop and you can think, is my interpretation of this true? Is there a different interpretation? Is there a different meaning that I can create from this? You have the power to change your interpretation of something because with more information, our interpretation changes. That's just the way it works. So therefore, our truth isn't always the truth. Our truth is usually reliant on more information or on our moods or our perceptions of things or the assumed story we have about the relationship, the person, the situation that we're in. And those things can change. So therefore, our truth can actually change and shift over time. It's no different than you can have an experience that happened 10 years ago. Okay, let's say. And in that moment, you'll create a certain meaning. And as you move forward in your life, 5 years down the road, when you look back at that situation, your meaning and interpretation might be a little bit different. And 10 years down the road, it's going to be a little bit different. The experience is still real, but the meaning, your perception changes over time. And that is brilliant. That is a great thing. That means that we are constantly evolving and changing and we're adaptable, we're flexible. And that's just the way it's supposed to be. That means we can recreate meaning at different points, that we are in charge of the meaning that we create over certain situations. And instead of this being a little bit like, I don't really know what to do with this, it is something to really embrace and ask yourself, like, if I could sit in a place of saying, this experience I'm having is real, my interpretation of it is up for negotiation. I can decide how I want to interpret this. I can take charge of how I interpret this, of the truth that really comes through it. Just like in yoga, when I have that experience of my back being really tight and telling myself I can't do this, that's actually not really true because I did do it. So in reflection, I can see that thought, that meaning I created, that perception in that moment, that limited idea that I had about myself was actually untrue because I did something different. Now, when we're so busy reacting all the time and we don't give ourselves time to process, reflect on how we reacted to something, then we don't come into connection to what is true and what isn't true. And when we come to a place of recognizing that, let's say the meaning we created isn't true or the perception we had wasn't true, it isn't fault, it isn't failure. And in fact, that's actually a sign of really, really good growth because it means that you're allowing yourself to be flexible. You're allowing yourself to negotiate your perception and the meaning that you create. And that is really, really powerful. Think about that. If you can really sit in a place of reflecting on your reactions and your interpretations, your perceptions, and the meaning that you create, and that you can negotiate that with yourself, within yourself, not for someone else, but for yourself, then that's really powerful. But we need to make sure that the meaning we're creating is connected to us and isn't about people pleasing, right? So this isn't about letting someone off the hook. This isn't about recreating reality because we're not doing that. This isn't about excusing people's behaviors. It really is about sitting within yourself and processing your reactions, processing your meanings, processing your perspectives, and asking yourself if that's actually true. And perhaps it is, and that's great. But sometimes it's actually not true. We often talk about, you know, real and truth in the same way, like they're interchangeable and they're not. It's a really like a micro shift. It's a really small thing that has major, major ripple effect outcomes to improve how you feel about your life, how you feel about yourself in your life, and your ability to be present in your life. The more present you are, the more grounded you are, the more you are aligned with your own values and who you are and how you want to show up in the world. The second we move into autopilot or we're just like skating through life and we're so busy and inundated with demand after demand after demand, and we're just reacting and reacting, reacting with no reflection, is when we get ourselves into trouble, is where we move away from our values, we move away from what's important to us, who we are, who we want to be in the world, and we become almost performative of somebody or a personality type in our life. And we're really just not there as much. Now, if you're going to tell me you don't have time, I'm going to call bullshit on that actually. Because if you tell me you don't have time, but if you go to your phone and you look at your phone report on how much you're on your phone and what you're on, you have time. You have lots of time. And the phone, your phone, my phone, really takes us out of our present moment, takes us out of what's happening in our life, and we kind of check out and zone out. And this isn't reflective time. This isn't self care time. That's not restoration time. That's just time wasted. You want to talk about wasted time? That's actually wasted time. Sitting in silence with yourself and your thoughts, breathing, journaling, that is not wasted time. That's connected time with yourself. And it's something to question yourself. Like, how often do you stop and really ask yourself, is my interpretation of the situation true? Is this a story I'm telling myself about the situation? And is this have I confirmed the story? Have I had a chance to confirm whether it's actually true or not? Now, this happens a lot in conflict in relationships, friendships, parent relationships, partnerships, is that, you can have a conflict about the dishes, let's say. And the story I tell myself is that my partner's not doing the dishes because he believes it's my job to do it. And then I react based on this interpretation, this truth that I've created that he's being super disrespectful and this is why the dishes are my fault or my responsibility. And I react from that place that I believe to be true without actually confirming that that's actually the reality of the situation, with that's the true his truth. But if I encounter, engage in that way to ask or to say, well, is that actually true? Do I have evidence to support this? Or could there be another reason involved? Could there be a million other reasons of why this is happening? Now, this doesn't mean it's a pattern, and I'm not dismissing the importance of, sharing household responsibilities, but it's just a small example of, how we quickly jump to our own truth and that there's a possibility that there's another truth. The real piece of it is the dishes have not been done. That there's no question about that. But what that means and the perspective we have and the interpretation of that reality is really up to us. And we deserve for ourselves to double check the truth of our perspectives or the meaning that we're creating of a situation. Because what you'll quickly realize is that a lot of that conflict, internal conflict and external conflict in relationships with anybody in your life, whether it's work, whether it's raising kids, whether it's friendships, whether it's your neighbor, whether it's your mom or your dad or your brother, your sister, or your partner, your spouse, whoever it is really rooted in the meaning that we're making out of what is real. And that's what we have to negotiate is the meaning making that we do. There's a lot of power in that. And so I encourage you to get a little more present in your life and ask yourself, this is real, but it may not be true. And how can I interpret this in a way that feels a bit more true? We all have a default that we, go to all the time. And, and that can go back to different things about us. There are our attachment, our own trauma, our own childhood, past relationships. We default to an interpretation of a meaning based on our experiences. But that may not be true for this current situation, this current reality. It was true for a past reality, but it may not be true for a current reality. And I think that's a little bit of the disconnect we have sometimes. Or I see this disconnect happening a lot in relationships or in conflict that people have with each other because we're social beings. We're constantly in relationship with everybody around us. And we have conflict all the time, whether that's external that we actually speak out or we're having internal conflict about a relationship. So there's reality and the truth is negotiable. And a current reality doesn't get and doesn't deserve to be narrated by a past truth. So you need to move into the present, not allow some of the past truths to come forward. So a past truth of abandonment, rejection, loneliness, hurt, and pain, all those things are related to a past experience, a past reality. And that's that truth, but it's not necessarily today's truth. And we love to automate things. Our brain automates everything. It loves to just jump to conclusions because it's trying to preserve energy. So we don't often sit and reflect and ask ourselves this truth that I've come up with for this reality in front of me. Is that in today's reality or is that from a past reality that I'm carrying forward? And does this current situation deserve to be narrated by the past? Does it deserve to be narrated by a past experience with someone completely different that has nothing to do with what's happening today? And this is a difference between real, but maybe not always true. And we get to negotiate that truth a little bit. And I find that exciting. And I take that into my yoga practice and I take that into my life. And I hope that you do too. I hope this inspires you to take a pause, to reflect. You have the ability to. It's going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to feel a little bit jittery, just like it does in yoga. And patience is really difficult. We don't have a lot of patience and we're constantly distracted. So it really is fighting against, the norm at this point to reflect. But give yourself some time, whether you're in the car or you have a chance to be alone or in the bathtub or, maybe you just book some time in your schedule. You schedule everything else. Why not schedule some reflection time? You're worth it. It's important to you. And I can guarantee you this is going to change not only how you feel about your life, how you show up in your life, but it is going to change how you relate to other people. It's just going to do that. It's just going to transform because reflection always leads to some sort of transformation. And when you have that, you show up differently and you do differently. And that makes a difference. I hope you found today's episode helpful. I'm so happy to be back for another season, and I cannot wait to share some of the great interviews that we have scheduled in the podcast. Look forward to another season with you, and I hope that you have an amazing day. Be well, be brave, be bold.